Hello everyone. Today I'm gonna be talking about some of my favorite music from the year. I wanted to kind of do things a little differently this time. I wanted to focus more on less on the numerical stuff and more on just groupings of stuff that I think is like really quality. Um, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have like a whole bunch of honorable mentions that I'm gonna like briefly touch on, and then we're gonna go into like the real stuff. And so, without further ado, I'm gonna kind of run through those, and I'll have all the stuff, all the information, everything in the description. And yeah, all right. So let's just. All right. So for honorable mentions, we have Chemist put out a good album this year. Hooded Menace put out another good album this year. The Tritonus Bell. Creeping Death put out an EP called The Edge of Existence that was really good. 200 Stab Wounds put out their full-length album Slave to the Scalpel. That was really fun. Conjureth with Majestic Dissolve. This is some OSDM stuff. Eye of Purgatory is a Raga project that I thought was particularly interesting from him. We have Flustars with the name I'm not going to try and pronounce. Some weird not so sort of posty black metal. That's pretty cool. Wraith with Undo the Chains, some like black and thrash stuff. It's super fun. Holder with one woman black metal projects, God's Last String, Hymns of a Forlorn Peasantry. Cryptosis with the Bionic Swarm is some like sci-fi thrash stuff that similar to the band we're not allowed to mention anymore. Thocandra with A Dying Wish is some dissection worship, pretty much. Like, it's good, but that's about all it is. Sadistic Force with some blackened thrash, blackened speed, called Aces Wild. And then Ephemera with A Dream of Wilderness. There's like symphonic melodeath. It leans a little more symphonic than I would have hoped, but I mean, I really liked our last record. So, and then lastly, we have 1914 with Where Fear and Weapons Meet. Just great stuff. Definitely like a bigger production sound from them. If you don't know this band, they do like World War One stories in like a blackened Death Doom style, and it's super great. Like their first record or their last record, Blind Leading the Blind, was just amazing. And so this is like right up there with it. Just little not quite making it for me. But definitely check them out. They do really respectful stuff that's really good. All right, so before we get into it, I want to mention a couple things. A few releases that I will not be touching on this list are Aquilus with Bellum 1, because I reviewed it for Metal Utopia, which I'll have a link for in the description. It's a really great review. I wrote it. I'm really proud of it. And yeah, definitely go read it. Even though that album's great and it definitely would have been on this list, I just don't feel like it's worth talking about at length again. So consider that one of my albums of the year, but I'm just not going to discuss it super lengthy here. I also would have included Wretched Inferno on this list as well, but I reviewed them for the channel. And lastly, I would have included Havakruunu on here, but technically that releases an EP, even though it's like 30 minutes. And so I kind of just wanted to make room. And yeah, so go and check out all those for some great stuff. And then yeah, now let's get into the real stuff. All right, so first up, we have Tombstoner with their album Victims of Vile Torture, released July 30th on Redefining Darkness. Essentially, these guys managed to combine death metal and hardcore in a way that just isn't cringe, which is really good. I think it has something to do with just like their fantastic HM2 guitar tone. Like, it's so good. And it's not that this record is like particularly groundbreaking or anything, it's just like a joy to listen to. And it's just a fucking riot with like riffs front to back. And I mean, if you don't mind like hardcore style breakdowns in your death metal, but still like being able to like maintain a real knuckle dragging aggression, then you'll definitely be into this. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of hardcore in general, and I find that a lot of the hardcore inspired stuff gets worse the more it sounds like hardcore. But this is actually really good, and it reconciles that a lot. So definitely check that out. Up next, we have Bewitcher with Cursed Be Thy Kingdom on April 16th via Century Media. This is some like black and heavy metal stuff with just fantastic riff writing and choruses, and it's super fun. There's some all-time like banger tracks on here. The only issue is that some of them just don't really land as well. There isn't any bad tracks, but some of them just aren't bangers. And then like also this is like really impressive because despite his like growled vocals, his pronunciation is super good, and it's like really singable. Like you can really get into it and sing along with the choruses and stuff. It's super fun all the way through, and for just one guitar player, he really fills up the space super well. I saw them live, and even though the sound guy was a little confused, like just his writing is super good, and he fills up the space really well. All right, then I have Be'lakor with Coherence, released October 29th on Napalm. Be'lakor are an Australian melodeath band that do like a melancholic, sort of atmospheric, almost progressive kind of melodeath. Be'lakor are unmistakable. They've released some just all-time melodeath classics in their discography, and this one is actually probably their weakest album, but it is still like great. It can sound a little drawn out at times, and I agree that it is like not entirely focused all the time, but it's just like their songwriting prowess is just fantastic. And the heavy sessions are just like quintessential Be'lakor, and the softer parts, the atmospheric parts fit super well, and they're really musically interesting all the time, and they just build an atmosphere, and it's just great. So definitely check this out. Yeah. Up next, I have Mortiferum with Preserved in Torment via Profound Lore on November 5th. This is some like just crushing, grimy death doom of just the best. Their first record was also awesome, and so there was a lot of expectation for this one, and they met them just going away. It's like the riffs here are so like face crushingly heavy with tempo changes just all over the place. It feels like you're like blinking from a crawl back to like into a sprint and then back into a crawl, and it's just, oh man, the drumming on here especially is super good. The dude uses the bell part of the cymbal like super well, and it builds so much tension. It really keeps the band on like a short leash the whole time, and it's just incredible. Like it's like top tier death doom stuff right here. Mortiferum have been consistently like fantastic, and at this point they're just like improving on their formula, and it's so good. It's so good. All right, now I want to talk about Ethereal Shroud with their album Trisagion, I think is how you pronounce that. Released December 10th independently. This is some just gorgeous atmospheric black metal with like a symphonic tinge to it. It was written on and off over the last 15 years. It's a solo project, and so this beast feels just like a magnum opus. Like all the best like atmospheric black metal stuff, it's gonna wash over you beautifully with just enveloping tremolo guitar melodies, and it's great. It fuses with Funeral Doom and has just a majestic, harsh atmosphere, and the drumming here is especially great. It fits both the black metal sections and the doom sections really, really well, and it's also not like super lo-fi either, and so all the instruments sound great and blend super well, and the writing flows really, really, really well, and it really feels like he's like telling a story about the downfall of the world essentially. There's lots of tasteful repetition to it, and symphonic touches will help carry the storytelling and prevent the atmosphere from ever just letting go. The doom sections on the third track are like just flow just as well as the black metal stuff does, and it gives a lot of additional emotional weight to the conclusion to the album. Transitions between styles are just like seamless, and it's fantastic. Like, also the dude who's behind this band, he's super cool. I've briefly spoken to him a couple times, and because he hangs out in some discords that I'm in, and he's a great guy. So definitely go and buy this album. He's super cool. Support this. It's really great. And this isn't even a band. This is just a dude like doing his thing, and I love him for it because it's fucking amazing. Up next, we have Sulphurous with their album The Black Mouth of Sepulchre, released October 24th on Meisako and Oho Records. This is a Danish death metal band that they put out like just a maelstrom of riffs for their second full length, and it's a huge step up. Their first record was good, but I thought it was kind of uninteresting. But they've really embraced like the cacophony for every riff. And it feels like you're really like falling into the abyss that's pictured on the cover. It's like if there was ever a death metal album that felt like being like in the middle of a swirling maelstrom of fucking death and destruction, it's like definitely this. At first, I kind of underrated this album because I thought it was just like average, but on repeated listens, I was like, damn, this is actually really standing out, and like you can tell that their commitment to like just unrelenting punishment is really clear, and they pull it off super well. So definitely good stuff. And then immediately after that, we have Hyperdontia with Hideous Entity, released November 12th, also on Meisako and Noho Records. The Toothy Boys are back at it again with another monster of a record. Arguably, they're arguably the best of the Danish death metal bands, and their current and their newest album, Hideous Entity, is just Riff City through and through. It's fantastic. It sees Hyperdontia at their most inventive, and the writing in this record is super addicting for a death metal album that really doesn't try to be melodic, but still like they have just fantastic riff writing, and overall it just ends up being a fantastic listen. So riff-driven death metal with writing like this good, it can never get old. So definitely check this out. Alright, next we have Asphyx with Necroceros, released January 22nd on Century Media. This album is just everything I could have wanted out of a modern-day Asphyx record. It's got crushing riffs, it's got groovy riffs, it's got mid-paced stuff, fast riffs, and even like a super awesome, triumphant, doomy song right in the middle that I really didn't think they were capable of writing. This album has stuck with me since January, and it's just killer through and through. Like, there's a couple slightly weaker tracks towards the back end, but other than that, it's like consistently just awesome. And Martin Van Drunen's at like the top of his game as always, and his unique vocal style has really never sounded better, with the production being really, really solid, not super clean, but also like you can clearly hear all the instruments and they still have weight to them. It's not like that last Asphyx record, what was it, Death Hammer, where it sounded like really thin and almost like sterile. There's lots of depth to all the instruments, and it's really great. It's just a joy to listen to. So, the guitars have tons of weight, and everything's like super awesome. The riff writing is, it's not as doomy as you might expect, but it's definitely like super quality stuff. Alright, now I want to talk about Noltem with Illusions in the Wake, released October 15th on Transcending Obscurity. This band, they're a Connecticut black metal trio, and they released their debut album this year, and it's really something special. Like, this record is super interesting to me because it's both atmospheric and melodic black metal, but it's done in a really unique way. The atmosphere here is, like, warm and peaceful, sort of. The melodies have, like, a nostalgic feel to them, and the riffs will, like, sway back and forth, like a mellow sort of breeze. And despite being, like, fundamentally black metal, it's still, the overall sound is really nice. You might think I'm describing some, like, black gaze garbage, but I'm really not. Like, I don't know how they did it, but it's awesome. Like, there's tons of recurring motifs that seem to meditate on a single theme, and they utilize keyboards in a really nice way, adding layering to the atmosphere, and it does have moments of heightened sort of aggression, but even then, like, the sweet, like, guitar tone is still there, and it kind of mellows you out throughout the whole thing. Much like the crashing wave sounds on the song Submerged, this record feels like just waves lapping on the shoreline. It feels like the water washing in with the wind, and it's like, oh, this record would absolutely be for people who might be tired of the same old, like, harsh black metal, or maybe new listeners to the genre who maybe can't handle some of the more abrasive stuff, or maybe even just, people who are looking for something different. Also, the drummer of this band played session drums for Ethereal Shroud, actually, which is awesome and makes total sense because the style is really identifiable, and it has a similar sort of tone, similar sort of vibe with the atmospheric, like, washing over you kind of thing. And he's just a friggin' great drummer. Even though Ethereal Shroud's, like, guitar tone is much harsher and they kind of have, like, a darker vibe, this is, like, exceptional stuff. And they're both exceptional. They just have very different tones, I think. So definitely check us out too. All right, and then for the last one of my sort of 8 out of 10, like the majority of the list being, like, really good stuff. We have that Catafalque. I think that's how you pronounce that. With Vadak, released June 25th on Season of Mist. This band is an enigma. Like, so the mastermind behind all this is one dude, Tomas Katai, and he's been doing this stuff for years. Like, it's really hard to explain, so I'm just gonna kind of talk about what he does. His style consists, early on, it consisted of the avant-garde black metal style, really aggressive with kind of harsh production, but influenced heavily and incorporated with a lot of like electronic elements and folk elements and stuff. Now, in the modern era, his production is even better, and his writing is even more ambitious. So on this record, we hear everything from, like, death metal to, like, black metal, and then folk metal with, like, progressive metal, and then a bunch of, like, ambient parts, even, like, some synthwave stuff, Hungarian folk music, and even, like, a section of straight up indie rock. It can be, like, disorienting to listeners who aren't familiar with this style, but for those that are, this is, like, one of his best works to date. And just the sense of melody and songwriting on this album specifically is just fantastic. Every track has a sense of direction, but it also has just an unpredictable feeling where you don't know where he's going to go next with it. If you're looking to get into, like, Catafalque's discography, if you're curious about avant-garde sort of metal, or if you're looking for something a little weird, this is definitely something to check out. Alright, so without further ado, we have arrived at the big boys. So these are going to be my absolute favorites. These are going to be albums that I would consider, like, 9 out of 10, like 4.5 out of 5, like, excellent stuff. And yeah, so keep that in mind, and we'll get right into it. So, first up, we have Cân Bardd with Devoured by the Oak, released November 12th independently. For this album, this is easily my pick for atmospheric black metal album of the year, and that comes after Noltem and Ethereal Shroud and a whole bunch of other great atmospheric stuff that came out this year. So that really means something. The sense of just melody on this album is unrivaled, especially on the magnificent track Un Coron de Barches, I think, French. I don't know, I don't speak French. The folk sections and the soft sections in this album are just always incredibly beautiful, and the heavy parts will explode out like an orchestra in a concert hall. The whole thing is one of the most just majestic things I've heard all year. And despite being a bit long-winded at times, it still makes like my big boy list. The decision to use guest musicians instead of programmed instruments for what is essentially a solo project of one Swiss kid who's like 23. The guest musicians pay off super well. Like every part has just a beautiful emotion to it that can't be replicated by a computer. Everything has just like so much weight to it. The parts and the production, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Give this a listen if you're into atmospheric black metal, if you're into folk metal, if you're into both, then you might just love it as much as I do. Alright, now we have Worm with Foreverglade, released October 22nd on $20 spin. Who is up playing with a worm? This record is absolutely disgusting, and I love it. It's so great. Worm have made some just stellar death doom here, and it's really special. Like, this whole record has just a dripping atmosphere, and it's full of reverb, and it's, ugh. Listening to this album, you really feel like you're just, like, slogging through a wet, dark cave, and you're being hunted by some giant serpentine creature, and it's like, oh, it's, ugh. The production is just spot on. It could not be better for this style. The fantastic atmosphere is thanks to the just stellar production, but also the tasteful use of synthesizers for sort of a guiding kind of sound. And it never feels like campy or fun, but it always is just perfectly utilized to create just a fantastic, spooky, foreboding tone to the whole thing. And oh, the crushing riffs are really amplified by the super reverby production, and it makes the caveman like death doom riffs even better to listen to. And then there's like there's like Chuck Schuldiner esque solos on the back half of it, and oh my gosh, the way it just like crawls and then like crushes you over and over again. It's amazing. The cover is amazing. The art is amazing. The production, the music, everything, it's amazing. Their merch is so good. I'm always up playing with my worm. I love this album so much. Alright, so for our number 2, we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have a little discussion about it because I know he really liked this album too. So, yeah, let's just do that.
All right. Hi, everyone. For this album, we're going to be talking about Stormkeep's Tales of Othertime. And right now, I have with me the one and only, the myth, the vampire lord himself, Kalen, a.k.a. Painxpiss, a.k.a. the guy from Hexablad. Yeah, so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kalen, or stage name Bruxa from Hexblood.
Right.
I just really like black metal.
There you go. And so he's going to be here as kind of an encyclopedia of sorts because I can recognize that specifically this album, Stormkeep's Tales of Othertime, is very much a tribute to the sort of classic melodic black metal that came out in the mid '90s. And I am not entirely familiar with a lot of the classic bands. Of course, I've heard enough to be familiar with the genre, but I'm not a connoisseur, as we might say. So I have the nerd here to do that job for me. All right. So without further ado, yeah, this album's amazing. Like,
Yes, it's a fantastic record.
I mean, like, oh man, would you say this? I mean, I remember this was your number one, I think, right?
Yes, of 2021 favorite album. Yeah,
I mean, I I rarely say that an album is perfect, but would you say that this is perfect?
I would say maybe it's not perfect, but there's not a single thing I would change that's on the record itself. Everything on
Okay.
there is perfect. There's more I would wish for,
Right.
but everything that's on tape is flawless. Yeah. I think it speaks a lot for the quality of the record itself that I can listen to it all the way through, and by the time the last track rolls around, I'm like, ah, shit, I wish there was more. It's already over.
Right. It gives you the feeling you want to play it again immediately afterwards,
Mhm,
right?
exactly, which I usually do.
Yeah. So on the first track, especially, they really give like a strong first impression. I feel like, and
Oh, absolutely.
for my money, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, but I'm hearing a bit of. I mean, obviously you're hearing like Dimmu Borgir, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then a bit of dissection, although there's not as much melody as there are in the dissection records. And then
No.
I'm also hearing a bit of like mid-era Immortal, almost kind of like at the Heart of Winter era
Hmm.
Immortal, where the
Yeah.
like the thrashier riffs.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you're kind of hearing in the first song, especially?
On the first track especially, I am hearing that early Dimmu like influence, like before they sold out and went totally clean and polished. The dissection mention is pretty spot on. I would maybe tie it more akin to bands like Dawn or Sacramentum. It's a little bit less melodic, but still in that melodic vein.
Hmm.
And something that I picked up on is I believe it's about 2/3 of the way through the song. They play this riff with this harmonic that is like a dead ringer from Emperor's first record.
Oh, okay.
That they're kind of like the modern continuation of Emperor, and I
Hmm.
think that's fantastic.
Yeah, of course. The first interlude on the album is very much an homage to specifically summoning. It doesn't really take a genius to realize that, and personally, I'm kind of glad it's really just a perfect length,
Yeah.
because when you're doing when you're doing an interlude this early into the album, you kind of have to be careful with not having it detract too much from the energy, and I think they do a nice job of keeping it at a solid quick 3 minutes.
I've noticed on this record here, they kept their dungeon synth and like ambient influences to the interludes,
Right.
whereas on their debut EP, they would have it interspersed with like the actual full songs,
Okay.
which a lot of people online had an issue with, even though I thought it was great. But I also love dungeon synth and
Hmm.
black metal together, so I was fine with it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that the interludes really do a good job of like bookending
Hmm.
the massive black metal that we get in between, which
Right.
is
Of course.
it's great. Yeah, makes it sound so much bigger and more like epic.
The next track, "Journey Through Storms," is it's more. I mean, it's not like up tempo, but it is still also very energetic, and
Hmm.
I feel like there's more of the sort of thrashy elements on this track as
Yeah,
well. Would you agree to that?
yeah. It's much more aggressive than
Hmm.
the opening track by a fucking landslide. Yeah.
Right, yeah. My brain works where it really grabs onto memorable riffs and like quality melodies that will kind of lead you along a path, sort of. I'm someone who needs that kind of guiding energy in an album, and this has it through and through, all the way. It's fantastic. Their melody writing and just sense of like being able to write not even necessarily a chorus, but a just a great riff that will like lead you
Hmm.
along is
Yeah,
just.
when the riff really works as a hook, that's how it
Oh,
really gets
absolutely,
you,
yeah.
Yeah, it drives you along into the next portion of the song and into the next track on the track listing.
Hmm.
It's like a just shot of adrenaline, and it's awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I think the best example of that would be the next track, is the Serpent Stone, which is my favorite track. I think it's yours as well, if I remember correctly.
It's my favorite black metal song of the year.
On this track especially, they bring out a lot of unique sort of elements that they're kind of omitting on the rest of on the rest of the main tracks, which are
Hmm.
specifically the use of synths and the use of even clean vocals on the chorus, which
Hmm.
is just amazing. Like it's incredible effect. This is also in the vein of Emperor, but using more triumphant
It's
synthesizers, I would
Yeah, it's
say.
touching more on Emperor's later catalog,
Right.
like Prometheus and the Revenant's EP.
Hmm. I also
Hmm.
hear even more of like the early Dimmu Borgir on this track as well.
Yep.
Um, so But then there's the weird element of the clean vocals. Would you say that that's just like an inclusion of theirs that they felt would just be cool, or is there a story behind that as well?
Um, if I was thinking about like the roots of like using that in a song like this, I could look back at bands like Enslaved or
Hmm.
Winder, who would occasionally do that. A lot of the bands who had like the Viking metal or the folk metal aspect to
Right.
their sound. Um, it worked to great effect with Caladan Brood a
Hmm.
decade ago,
Yeah.
which the clean vocals are Jake from Visigoth, who
Yeah.
was
So
Caladan Brood.
I was gonna say
So
like
just
there's the folk metal connection there. The
mhm.
singer is the dude from Cowden Brood. So
I think it was good to hear a sound that was popular a decade ago brought into a song that's paying homage to a sound from 2 decades ago.
yeah. And then what I find curious is that other than the summoning interlude, of course, there really isn't much overlap with Cowden Brood. I feel like, I mean, other than
Not
just like
necessarily, no, yeah.
other than like thematics, I guess, because it's like
Mhm.
about wizardry and shit. But and then after that we have the acoustic interlude, right? Which
Yep. Oh, the dragons. To me, it kind of felt like um the way that the first interlude was the dungeon synth one.
mhm,
This is kind of like the acoustic version of that same vibe. So it's
right.
almost like they wanted to give us an interlude with traditional instruments. Um, bands like Emperor, Winder, Enslaved, and a slew of others would all toy with like acoustics in little tiny parts of their songs,
Hmm.
but they wouldn't use it to full effect the way that a band like Agalloch would
Yeah,
a
of course.
decade later.
And of course the performance is really good, and the melodies they're playing are nice, but it's really not intended to stand out the way that the other tracks do. I feel like.
Yeah. It's meant to slowly guide you into like the blizzard that's coming up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The absolute
Absolutely.
like the maelstrom that is the
Hmm.
final track. I mean, much in line with the theatrics of Stormkeep, it's very much a fantastical sort of like blizzard.
Yeah, it's not like a Paysage de Verre record where it just
Hmm.
feels like staticky snow just enveloping you. This feels like a wizard casting ice spells at you the whole
Oh yeah,
time.
100%. All right, so on the last track, Eternal Majesty Manifest, what would you say is there any different influence on this track, or are they bringing in just a different weight of kind of thematics where they're going for more of a triumphant, like very epic and aggressive feeling? Is there any bands that really fit that bill more than anything else?
Um, I am probably beating a dead horse here, but it reminds me a lot of Emperor's final record, Prometheus.
Okay. So on the last track, I'm also hearing a bit of In the Night's Eclipse, of course, with just like the with the spooky synths and stuff. But I feel like that's
Hmm.
kind of a surface level analysis, if you might say. It's probably not wrong, but it's kind of just like,
There's really only two things that I think could be changed on this album because I think it's perfect as is. But I did love hearing Jake's clean vocals on it in the two songs they used it on. It's like this blood pumping, just triumphant march of just epic power vocals
hmm.
that are very akin to his work with Visigoth, even.
Oh yeah.
And I think they should have definitely utilized that more. Then at that point, it kind of you risk taking the record more into like the poppy accessible
Hmm.
territories that a lot of true black metalers would not like.
It does risk making it feel too accessible,
Hmm.
um, and that's actually something that they managed to balance really well with.
I think this is a perfect record as far as accessibility goes because
Mhm.
people like me who enjoy the raw, grimy shit you can find on Bandcamp with five like listeners ever, that appeals to me, but also it appeals to the mainstream black metal fan who doesn't go any farther than like Mayhem or Dark Throne
Right.
or Cradle of Filth even, you know?
Oh yeah, exactly.
I mean, this album even I've seen a lot of people who don't even like black metal say, "Oh, Stormkeep put out a great record this year,"
Hmm.
which I think is fantastic for getting people into the scene.
Oh yeah, absolutely. True.
It's a fun record to listen to.
Oh yeah.
There's so many great like riffs and like vocal lines, like especially the one-liners on this album that I will just think about. And me being in a band myself, I just think like, damn, I could never write a one-liner as good as the one from like Serpent Stone, where he just has Black Magic Reckoning. Like, what is
Yes!
that? I don't know what it is, but it's awesome.
But yeah, their art's awesome. The cover's amazing. It's like just the best thing. It's so fucking good. The color scheme with the red logo and the red text is just gorgeous over the blue
The red
cover.
on the blue looks fantastic.
Oh man! And then
I think everything from the music to the artwork, this album really set a benchmark. If you're going to make epic symphonic black metal, like from this point going forward, if you're not trying to be as good as Stormkeep, why are you even doing it?
oh yeah,
Because like this is going to be a hard album to top, but I'm excited for bands to try to top it. I think it's great that this band came along, and I mean, even from like, there's a massive sound change almost from their EP to this full length, where they really did embrace that second wave, like big symphonic, like black metal sound, whereas the first one had like that medieval dungeon-y symphonic sound. It was a lot more murky, a lot more less clear and like present.
So this isn't just like a random band either. We know all of these guys because I believe it's all the members of Wayfarer and then Isaac from Blood Incantation. So the nerd who wrote that 18-minute song.
Really, everyone in this band brought their A game to this record.
Oh, 100%.
You can see why, like, typically supergroups, when they're formed, it's kind of like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
This band shows why you should do that.
All right, sweet. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, of course, I'll have links in the description to the album and to Kaylin's Twitter and probably Hexblad's Bandcamp as well. Yeah, there's his band. Check it out. It's great. Witcher-themed black metal, which is the coolest thing you've ever heard. You can follow this nerd on his Twitter, and then you can follow me on my significantly worse Twitter. And then, yeah, so listen to this shit. It's fucking great. And then let's go to number 1.
All right, finally, my album of the year. The apple of my eye, just the best thing. Oh, it's so good. Okay, if you know me, there's one thing that I'm an absolute just slut for, and that's folky metal death. So, guess what my album of the year is? It's Duskmourn with Fallen Kings and Rusted Crowns, released June 19th, independently, actually. Oh, I love this album so much. Oh my gosh, I love this band so much. Duskmourn are just a fantastic, unsigned American duo that play incredibly European melodeath. And it's great. Their sound is reminiscent of like Einsiferum, Amorphis, Winter Sun, bit of Moon Sorrow, even Windeer, and it's so good. What makes it stand out is just how fantastic their riff writing is. Their ability to write a triumphant epic riff and then follow it up with another triumphant epic riff is just unparalleled. Like, there is nobody else like this. And this album makes me so happy. Like, I listen to it and the time just flies by. Every song has fantastic riff after fantastic riff, and it never feels old. It never feels dull, and it never gets boring. It's so good. The vocals don't really stand out much, but it allows for the just impeccable guitar work to shine. Their production is flawless. It really amplifies just the weight of every riff. Their songwriting is incredibly addicting, and their melody writing is just impeccable. Like, you'll have so many riffs stuck in your head after listening to this album. Oh, it's so good. Granted, it's not perfect, and I would say it's not even my favorite Duskmourn record. I think that honor goes to their 2014 album Legends. That was their debut. But this style is just so perfect for me. It's like my bread and butter. And so this album still, even since June, holds the spot as my album of the year. And I will not back down on that. I love this album so much. Alright, yeah, so thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for listening to me ramble. I'm going to have the links to everything that I mentioned in the description. And yeah, so check me out, follow me on Twitter, listen to all these bands, follow my guest on Twitter. And yeah, so see you guys next time.